Let me tell you a little bit about me for those of you who don't know me very well. Not that it matters, but I was born and raised in Myrtle Beach. So I would be what you call a native, and apparently that's a rarity here. I'm also a business person, and my family started in the motel business right down the street from Mr. Hobika, a very small motel on Ocean Boulevard. And I watched my mom and dad work very, very hard to manage the motel business, and my dad at that time was a delivery person for Pabst Blue Ribbon Company. So he really worked his way up from really being very obscure, working hard, blue-collar worker, to owning Better Brands, which is what our company is today. And the reason I bring that up, and I feel that it's so important, is that that is where I got my strong work ethic from. And my dad was the type that you didn't just get something because of who you were, you earned it. So I can honestly tell you that everything that I have had to do to work my way up in Better Brands is because I was made to earn it. And that has been the biggest life lesson for me and the best gift that my father could have ever given me. My husband, Brown Bethune, is here today, and we call him our son-in-love. Our son-in-love, Adam Singleton, is also here. We have 3 daughters and the 2 cutest grandsons you'll ever see. And I just appreciate them for being here today. So, we all know what our number 1 issue is. And I will tell you, it is the one thing that I have spent the most of my time researching, looking at what other cities have done, going online, talking with people, and that is our public safety. And we would be putting our heads in the sand if we pretended that we do not have public safety concerns. We do. And of course we do. Because we are a very small geographical area that has over 18 million visitors a year. And with that growth comes many challenges, and one of those challenges is increased crime. So we do have to have a plan in place to address that issue. I would love to be able to say that the city of Myrtle Beach could go out right now and hire 50, 75, 100, 200 new officers and have them on the street ready to go by next summer. But I really don't believe, with all the research that I've done and the people that I have spoken with, that that really is a rational problem to solve. And I would like to explain to you why. And I would encourage, since we do have Ms. Jeffcoat with us today, and she is obviously much more experienced than I when it comes to city council and the ins and outs of the management of the city, to jump in as well. From what I've learned is that when a new candidate for a police officer applies for a job, he goes through multiple tests, psychological tests, background checks. So first, he has to get through, he or she has to get through that testing period before he can even be considered to go into the academy. Being in Myrtle Beach, and those of you who do have businesses, I'm sure you are very well aware of how hard it is to find good people to go to work. And that is no different for my business and maybe some of yours than it is for our very own police department. So once a new candidate goes through the testing, is approved to go to the academy, it can take up to 9 months for him to get into that academy. And the reason for that is there are only so many spaces available, and we have every other law enforcement agency throughout the state trying to get their candidates into that academy as well. So it's not always an easy process. I wish that it were easier. I do believe that our council and our city management team is lobbying with our General Assembly to try to get more training centers so that we can get more officers trained more quickly. But the other issue is, for every new officer that goes through training, the expense can be upwards of $60,000 when you factor in his pay, his benefits, the cost of training, the equipment that is needed. So it's just not as simple, and it's not a one-dimensional solution to say, this is how many we need, this is when we will have them on the streets. Yes, we need a plan. We need a very strategic plan. And we need an analysis, a true analysis of how many officers we do need, and not simply based on our permanent population. Because we are not a small, sleepy little beach town anymore. So to base the number of officers that are needed simply by our permanent population is not fair. It's not fair to the citizens of Myrtle Beach. It is not fair to our businesses, and it certainly is not fair to the visitors who come here and want to feel safe. So that's a little bit about why it could take so long to get a large number of officers on the street. I do know that our new Chief of Police, Amy Prock, is very concerned about this. I believe that if we all give her a chance to work with our city manager, to work with council, to develop a strong strategic plan, I am very confident that that is being done. It is not my role as a candidate to say, this is how many officers we need, because I'm not working with them to do that analysis. But I do trust that it is being done. Some of the things that I have been looking into that I think could also help our public safety. I think we have to look outside of the box. We can't just look at, we need officers. We need to look at other ways and look outside of Myrtle Beach, go to other cities who have found solutions that have worked successfully for them, and try to implement those same things here. Brown told me just yesterday about an article that he read that Atlanta has a district that had a huge crime issue, and one of their solutions was to privatize police for just that one specific area. I have not had time to look into that, but I think it's something worth exploring. Another thing that I have spent a great deal of time looking into is the Responsible Hospitality Institute, and they are a nonprofit out of California. They actually worked with such cities as Las Vegas, Nevada, New Orleans, Charleston, South Carolina. And what they do is they come into cities that have a large population of tourists, and they assess your zones. They go to your high tourist zones, they assess your safety, they give you a report as to what they feel could be done to help you in those areas. They actually just hired the police chief of Charleston to be one of their consultants. And Charleston implemented this because of the problems that they had on King Street with crime, with public drunkenness, with drugs, and many other issues. So I do think that looking at that type of an organization and asking them possibly to come in and work with us could be very valuable to us. Part of what they implemented in Charleston, they call them hospitality officers. I do not know if they have the same accreditation as a police officer. I don't think that they do, but they do wear uniforms. They look very official, and they are on the street in those main zones to work with the businesses, to interact, to work with the visitors, to be another set of eyes and ears on the streets. And when we talk about needing more visibility, And we know that we can't just do it with our own force. We have to look at other ways to get that visibility out there to help our police force. And I think this is a very viable option for that. Another thing you may have read about on my website or on Facebook, I have talked about something I call TOPS, Traveling Officers Program. And basically what that is I started thinking about the Traveling Nurses Program. And what that is, we have nurses all over the country who sell their vacation days to other cities who need help, whether it's for a weekend or a week or months, and those hospitals bring them in to work. And I don't know what would have to be done in order for us to look at something like that. I know that we would have to discuss it with the General Assembly because there are training issues involved, but I think that's another viable option. We also talk a lot about why can't we bring in law enforcement from other cities to come here and help, from other states. Law enforcement throughout South Carolina can be brought in here to help us because they've gone through the same accreditation that our officers go through. However, if they are from out of state, they have to go through our academy to be able to work here. And I think that when we look at what can we do? What can we do differently? We know we have a problem, and we know we need a solution. We have to look outside of the box for that solution. It can't just be simply focused on our own number of police. We have to come to a rational number of police that we need. We need to look at what is it going to take to get them trained and on the street and ready to go. We are a council manager form of government in Myrtle Beach. So any of the three of us would only have one vote on council. Council is responsible for setting policy, voting, ordinances, things like that. The city manager actually upholds the policies, but also he is the CEO of the city. However, I very strongly disagree with where the library and where the Children's Museum is being proposed to be located. I very strongly disagree with how it's being done.
It concerns the TDF. I would like to know how much, if any, what percentage of the TDF that you would like to have kept by the city rather than turned over to the Chamber of Commerce.
I cannot give you a percentage, but I do want to address the TDF because when it was implemented in 2009, I believe, Mark, is that correct? It was done so at a time when the Gulf Coast had just experienced the oil spill and they lost all of their tourism. At that time, Myrtle Beach had the lowest, our hotels had the lowest occupancy rates in history, I believe. So the TDF was implemented to advertise to get people to come here, especially during hard times where our city was struggling and could have been even worse. So I do understand why it was developed then. I still think it serves a purpose. And I say that because the one thing that we don't want to do, the General Assembly wrote how that money can be used. If we go back to the General Assembly and we say we want to completely restructure this money, we are at risk of losing it. We need to keep that money right here. The TDF money can be used for infrastructure. It can be used for tourist-related redevelopment. So we can use the money for other things other than just advertising. That's not how it was written. It was written to be used to benefit our tourism industry.